Now review the movie this time, future me, and this time the proper one I told you to review. I guess if past me's gonna let me out, I guess it's time for me to do what he tells me to do if I want to get out of here.
One, two, three!
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I am here with episode 7 of my Halloween horror movie review, season 3. And this episode is not going to be a horror film, but it's the one I have to review as punishment from past me for watching Craptivity and not listening to his warning. After several in this crap hole of a ministry. After literally, I've had to spend now 3 days here since I got dragged here Sunday night by past me, and I'm still in this mechanic uniform that everybody wears in this crap of a town, and I literally tried escaping yesterday, trying to disguise my review for yesterday's Mirrors as the review for this one. And that miserably backfired because I realized the telescreens have microphones in them. And it was listening to every single thing I was doing. So now I got the shit kicked out of me again. And then thrown back in here again today to review the movie properly if I want to get out of here. So yeah. Anyway, this episode is going to be for the 1985 or 1984 John Hurt adaptation of the infamous George Orwell novel 1984. So what's the plot? Well, those of you who have probably had to read the book in school obviously know the plot. Well, longing for freedom, the lonely bureaucrat of the Ministry of Truth, Winston Smith, summons up the courage to write down his unspoken desires in his little secret diary. Serving silently at the pleasure of the grim autocratic hyperstate of Oceania, Smith knows that the English Socialist Party's supreme leader, omnipotent Big Brother, watches his every move, condemning the already terrified people into a life of slavery. Under those dire circumstances, as the totalitarian government suffocating strangholds tightens more and more, Julia, another equally insidious party member, crosses paths with Winston, and a dangerous clandestine affair begins. Now there's no turning back, and sooner or later, the illicit couple will have to pay for its hideous crimes against the dictatorial state. What makes a good citizen? Well, so how was this film made? Well, in Winter Nights, there was another adaptation in 1904 in the 50s, in black and white. George Orwell's wife did not like the adaptation, and she banned any more works of George Orwell's work, until her death anyways. Then in Winter 1983, the director of the movie, Michael Bradford, asked the producer to try to obtain the rights to Orwell's novel with low expectations that they were available. It turned out that the rights were held by Marvin Rosenblum, a Chicago lawyer who had been trying on his own to get such a film produced. Rosenblum agreed to become an executive producer, and while producers Simon Perry raised the production money from Richard Branson, Bradford wrote the script, inspired by his idea to make a science fiction film made in 1948. The script was finished in 3 weeks. For the role of O'Brien, Paul Schofield was originally contracted to play the part, but had to withdraw after sustaining a broken leg while filming The Shooting Party. Anthony Hopkins, Sean Connery, and Rob Steiger were all then considered. Eventually, Richard Burton, who was living in Hadia due to poor health, joined the production in 6 weeks into its shooting schedule and insisted on his costume of a boiler suit being handmade for him in Savile Row. And this would even go on to be the last film he made because he would pass away after this film was released. Some sources claim the principal photography began on March 19th, 1984, and ended in October 1984. However, the film was released that same month, and a title card at the end of the film explicitly states that it was photographed in and around London during the period of April to June 1984, the exact time and setting imagined by the author. The budget was originally $2.5 million in UK money, but this rose during filming and additional funds were required. The opening scenes of the film showing the 2 minutes hate were filmed in a grass-covered hangar in R.I.P near Chippenham in Wiltshire. Some scenes set in the Victory Square were also filmed at Alexandra Palace in London, and Senate House were used for exterior shots of the Ministry of Truth. The 1984 film adaptation made its theatrical debut on October 10th, 1984 in London, and on December 14th in New York City. It was released in the United States for 1 week on December 1984 at the Egyptian Theater in Los Angeles to qualify for the 1984 Academy Awards, and grossed a house record of $62,121, despite stormy weather. It also did receive mostly positive reviews, but not critical acclaim. So, as for my reaction to the film, well, okay, I've never read the book. I know a lot of schools make a lot of high schoolers read the book, but I never had to read the book in high school, thankfully. But I have seen the film. Only this film adaptation, not the black and white one. What were my thoughts on this? Well, it's alright, the best, but not masterpiece worthy. George Orwell's 1984 is one of the most celebrated novels of the 20th century, and we have words like Orwellian that have come in everyday modern usage. And there's apparently 2 television shows, Big Brother and Room 101, who take their concepts from 1984. It seems logical that if someone was going to make a film adaptation of the novel, then 1984 would be the perfect year to release it. However, Michael Radford's adaptation of Orwell is an irritating clash between the good and the bad. Radford's visuals are superb, and the tone sets the dark, gloomy, downbeat feel of the novel perfectly. Orwell used stained Soviet Union for much of the novel's inspiration, as well as 1940s Britain. The film's set design is drab and retro and full of urban decay and squalor that Ingsoc has bought to Airstrip 1. You can almost smell the rats and rubble and exploding rocket bombs. All this is helped in no small part by Roger Deakins' bleak cinematography. Radford also makes good use of the news screens given war reports on the crusade against Eurasia. Even the much criticized soundtrack by the Arithmetic seems perfectly suited to the film. John Hurt actually gives a pretty good and heartbreaking performance as Winston Smith, as well as actually one of the few best parts of the film. The movie also does take more time to instilling the situation of the future than it does on the actual characters, though. So while we get a chilling portrayal of how this modern society is ran and the rules that govern it, we're unfortunately not given much in the way of reasons to care about our main character's plights. The story itself had some interesting points to make, however, and depending on your stance, you may well believe that modern society is moving ever closer to the big brother of this film. Now back onto the performances. So, the only really well-known actor in this film is late actor John Hurt, rest in peace. Performs admirably here and attempts to convey the mass adoption of a totalitarian regime can definitely be applauded, but even if the film really fails, when you realize that half of the film deals with what fairly seems like the last half of the book, rather than focusing on societal factors that both facilitate and sustain such a regime. On a personal basis, relating to the character, by keeping a diary and having an affair with a young woman, he's more of an independent thinker than he should be, that he has the right to be in this new world order. Writing this, in 1984 was also, at the time, Richard Burton's last role before his death following the film's release. This part, mostly literally takes place during the third act when Winston Smith is starting to try to rebel and then gets tortured at the end until he sees what he's supposed to see, not what he really sees. And this part of the movie is really rather slow, which I guess was intentional. We get a belly full of the kind of propaganda citizens are force-fed with those screens that never turn off, unless it's for inner party members. the Big Brother is watching you aspect isn't really as played out, at least not up front, and to gain momentum and suspense, like rather it's an ingrown vibe throughout. And the best scenes that take place during the first half when the scenery resembles a post-apocalyptic yarn when a loner wanders around and through grainy perspective, the audience can firsthand witness the ruins of a dead society gasping for breath. And now when it comes to Richard Burton's performance, like he was a pretty good performance, but I feel like they should have got either Anthony Hopkins or Sean Connery to just do the role instead, because Richard Burton was in very poor health when they were filming this. Like, reportedly on set, Burton could hardly remember his lines. In fact, his mental state was already known during pre-production, so the director initially didn't want him on board at all, which definitely does make sense because he was in really bad health and on the last few stages of death when they were filming this. If he was in real life somewhat out of it, it won't up alright since the character has been programmed enough to be robotic by his own standards, despite the fact that he does have a bit of intellectual serpentine charm. Like, Burton is pretty known for his voice, and he's indeed known for the voice here. And finding this 11th hour expansion that details the only break the film offers to ongoing slow burn punishment of the senses. And there's a pretty little interesting concept here because like I bet when O'Brien was younger, he was probably also much like Winston since when he's like revealed to be a member of the Thought Police. As soon as Winston sees him, once he's arrested, it's like they got you too. And then O'Brien replies, "They got me a long time ago." So he probably once tried to do the same thing Winston tried to do, and also got captured and brainwashed long when he was around Winston's age. So that could be a pretty interesting little detail right there. And now, like since now he's been blind, but he was like one of the few kept alive to love Big Brother and ended up becoming a member of the Inner Party since O'Brien's a member of the Inner Party in this film. But anyway, and another bad quality I really have with the film. I also really wish the movie and story in general did not rely so much on sex. Like I felt like it just felt gratuitous after a while. But to move on to the third question, does this seem like a book that's really filmable? Not really that convincing. Like much of it isn't intangible stuff, inner monologues and thoughts, description of how the world works. A lot of this is missing, making the adaptation confusing at times. Certainly to anyone unfamiliar with the book, like I am, I feel like away from those descriptions of life under the regime, the book doesn't have enough plot to lend itself to an adaptation. But however, the best thing for me of this was probably John Hurt's performance. Like you got a very good, heartbreaking performance from John Hurt, and a pretty heartbreaking ending too. Like I know this is how the book ends, but still, like, yeah, he pretty much gets tortured in a place called Room 101, where rats get put on his head, and he ends up ratting up and decides to finally rattle Juliet to save himself and the rats, and now he's become pretty much a never loyal supporter of Big Brother, the very authority figure he tried to rebel against, and is soon going to be wiped of his existence as well, because whenever a thought criminal is finally condemned to a follower of the party, they soon get wiped from their existence or get shot. So pretty soon Winston's physical self is pretty much going to be killed after this movie ends. Or story ends. But all in all, guys, this film's not really a masterpiece worthy movie. I mean, like, we could have saw more of how this... I feel like we should have saw more of how this world happened, and so I think like a lot of scenes from the actual story were missing in here, so they could have made this movie a little longer. So that'd be a 100% faithful adaptation, but it seems like they just took out a lot of stuff here, and this movie just feels kind of rushed. So anyway, in the end, 1984 is a bleak film, but not a very memorable one. Sure, there are some decent performances, but that is literally it and nothing else. So this is just better off as one to just stream. Anyway, that's it for my review of 1984. If you're wondering how I'm going to rank 1984, here's how I'm going to rank this movie.
So overall, few people who have read the book want to see how a film adaptation would look, then I would just stream this one online because it's not that memorable enough to own. If you're wondering how I'm going to rank 1984, I'm going to give 1984 a 6 out of 10.
Alright, there we go, past me. I reviewed 1984. Are you happy now?
Yes, because you actually didn't try to disobey me this time and try to escape.
Okay, good. Does this mean I can finally go back to my studio or something like
Yes, but only on one condition you make.
that? What condition is that now?
You have to let me return for some rants, and you cannot banish me anywhere. Got that?
Wait, make an appearance in more of my videos? Well, I can make that happen, but it's not going to be easy a lot, so you're just gonna have to make rare appearances.
Oh, alright, fine. But you better be ready to expect me during certain reviews.
Well, guess that's a deal's a deal. So anyway, before I get sucked back into my studio and out of this crap of a dystopia, that will be it for this episode. Thank y'all for watching. And if you like this and want to see more, then don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone. Well, gotta get back to my studio now and get out of this place.